This podcast is brought to you by Most Valuable Podcasts, leading the league in podcasting entertainment.
What's up, real MVPs? Ricky Widmer here, along with the Mark Weber.
Dummies.
And we are back for another edition of the Onside Kick right here on Most Valuable Podcast, your one-stop shop for everything in the world of the NFL. Mark, we are continuing our previews. No additional stories, so it's just the four teams we're looking at. We're continuing in the South, this time on the NFC side of things. And in housekeeping this week, before we get into those four teams, I'm going to start out with a new item for housekeeping next week when Mark and I do the AFC West, right? The AFC?
Start with the AFC
and then NFC. AFC West next week. We're going to have an extra segment tagged on to the end of that podcast. We had a comment from ya boy 22, and as Mark said before we were recording, it's not his boy, but it's ya boy 22. Had a comment on our way too early mock draft for the NBA saying, hey, can you guys do one for the NFL? We will do that top 10 next week to end the podcast, so be on the lookout for that. Normal housekeeping after that one. If you want to help support the channel more so than you're already doing by watching and listening, make sure to check out Most Valuable Podcast on Patreon. That link down below in the description. $10 tier. You can join an Onside Kick each and every month you're at that tier and talk about the topic you want to talk about, if English can come out of my mouth. Then we're going to look at the store. I'm finally wearing it, so it makes sense to prop the shirt up. You can get this t-shirt down below in the description, and you can also get it on our website, mostvaluablepodcast.com. Just click the store. It'll take you right to it. You'll see Dave repping the t-shirt. You click it, you buy it, you'll wear it, you rep MVP. You can also check out mostvaluablepodcast.com to check out everything for MVP each and every day. And last but not least, if you're on Apple Podcasts, you're on iTunes, or you have them, go and give the Onside Kick a 5-star rating and let us know why you like listening to the podcast each and every week. But Mark, let's get into this NFC South. If you're new, how we do it is we start from the bottom, we go to the best. The Jaguar fans said it the best way. We save the best for last in each division from last year. So that means we're taking a look at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers coming into this season, and I feel like for this one, the starting point is easy. Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston the Buccaneers will be without him for the first 3 games of this season. Spoiler alert, you're going 0-3 in those games because you're playing the Saints, the Eagles, and the Steelers. Good luck beating those teams without Jameis Winston. But I'll ask you whichever one you want to start with. The team not having him for those 3 games, or the Jameis Winston suspension in general. What are your thoughts about Jameis Winston not being with the team for the first 3 games?
Well, okay, so here's the thing with Jameis. It's interesting right now, and I think that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are getting ready to have to answer a potential question. So with this time with Jameis, they have not really gotten the promise. They had that 1-9-7 year. They had
year
6
2 for
and
Jameis.
10, I think, was rookie year, and then 5-11 just this past year. So they haven't made the playoffs. They haven't gotten that promise. They still have that Mariota Jameis kind of debate, but
which Mariota's kind of winning because he's been to the playoffs.
Yeah, he has. That's what I was going to say. He's been to the playoffs, but it's not far away enough to where you're like, damn, we could have had Eli Manning, or not Eli Manning. We could have had Peyton Manning instead of Ryan Leaf.
But still, playoffs is playoffs.
Sure, winning is winning, though, too, and they lost.
He won a playoff game.
My point is they didn't get to... they don't get to the Super Bowl that you're going for.
They played Tom Brady. I'll give them a pass.
You're completely missing my point. My point is that the debate hasn't been won.
The Super Bowl. Yeah,
the debate has not been won, so it's still out there. But what we have at the moment is that it's coming back up, and it's coming back up because, like I said, Jameis hasn't been all that they thought. He hasn't been bad. I'm not saying that he's been a bad quarterback. This was one of the stronger, just pure passing offenses last year. But with that being said, not only has he not gotten them necessarily to the playoffs, when they were potentially going to be in the playoffs last year, people thought it was going to be because of the defense. Didn't work out, but that's what people were thinking. Now, we have all this off-the-field issue, and that brings us back once again. There's a reason why I brought up the Marcus Mariota, Jameis Winston debate. It brings us back to it again. What a lot of people were kind of saying is that with Marcus Mariota, you knew off the field things were fine. With Jameis Winston, there were a lot of people, I know you're not one of them who agrees, there's a lot of people who thought Jameis Winston has more talent, he has more ability, but he has more risk because of the off-the-field stuff.
I was always a Mariota bro.
I liked Jameis for exactly that reason. I understood that there were some issues there, but coming out of there, I thought he had just more pure, raw upside to him. Now, with that being said, we have to look at what is currently happening. The off-the-field issues are not gone. So this is Jameis Winston's 4th year. It's an important year.
It's his 4th year. The most important thing I'll throw out there, the Bucs picked up his 5th-year option, so he's making about just over $700K this year. Next year, he'll make close to $21 million in a contract year for the Buccaneers.
But I think that this year is, despite picking up the 5th-year option already, this is a very important year because you have all this off-the-field sexual assault stuff that has come back again to hit Jameis Winston. So much so to where the current report is that anything that the Bucs do, advertising-wise or murals around the stadium, they're not going to feature Jameis Winston. He's being essentially
they shouldn't
ignored and cast into the shadows, swept under the rug, whatever.
Rightfully so.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
He's the redheaded stepchild.
What they're doing at the moment,
no offense to redheads out there,
they're going to kind of hide him, setting themselves up for if there's another poor performance or failure or whatever it might be. They owe money, but they might be able to kind of cut and run a little bit or get ready to do so because they're kind of already distancing themselves from him. And with a poor performance this year, especially if somehow Ryan Fitzmagic goes out there and steals one from 2 out of these 3 teams, I think he can steal one from the Steelers. Eagles and Saints is going to be a lot tougher, but at least one of those is division opponent, and you never know what happens within the division.
Yeah.
But if you could steal some of those, there starts to become this vocal minority of people, and I don't even know if they're that big of a minority, who are just plain sick of Jameis Winston, who are going to say, we don't want that kind of person on this team. We got somebody who just won us 2 games. Let him keep playing. Ride the hot hand. And that's when you start to get into some easier games as well after Jameis gets back.
One question I am going to ask you is, I'll say this. For me, it's not all on this year, and the only reason I say
got
that
an extra
is
year on the contract.
No, it's not just that. It's for me the only reason why it's not just on this year and it'll be on last year as well is because when you look at and I'm going to be spoiler here, I've got the Buccaneers at like 2 wins. If your window is like 2 to 3 wins, you're going to be a top 5 pick, maybe even a top 3 pick in this draft coming up in 2019. The thing that is not a worry this year for Jameis Winston is this quarterback class coming into 2019 could be one of the worst quarterback classes we see in some time. Now, compared that to the class we saw last year, and you're like, duh, Ricky, last class was really good. This one is not going to be that good. But people are already looking at it like, wow, this could be one of the worst quarterback classes we have seen in some time. Because of that, right now I'm looking at the Bucs going, they're not going to take a quarterback in the first round. So Jameis Winston in his contract year is going to have no competition for that starting role. So for me, next year will be the make or break year.
Yeah, but I don't think that they need to draft a quarterback next year to essentially be moving on from Jameis.
I would say it would be, the interesting thing is, let's say this was last year and they were a top 3 pick. If they were to draft a guy like a Sam Darnold caliber, a Baker Mayfield caliber, a Baker Mayfield would make sense because it's a guy who many people think, he can sit a year and doesn't have to start year one. If they were going to bring in a guy like that this upcoming draft, then I would say, all right, Jameis he's got some pressure on him because it's kind of like, hey, we've got the incumbent behind you. You've got to put up or shut up right here. He's not going to have that next year. So
that wouldn't have made sense either to draft somebody to sit behind your 24-year-old quarterback.
I mean, if you're looking to get rid
in
of
the
him,
first round, then you just trade him.
I mean, you could do that, but how often do we see trades get done at all in the NFL? But my point being, this year, because there's going to be no pressure this year, I wonder with Jameis, is it just going to be another nonchalant year for Jameis Winston after he comes off the suspension? It's going to be so key because this team as a whole, you've kind of hit on it, the defense, everyone has hyped this defense, especially when Lovie Smith was the head coach a couple years ago. They add a big piece, the one that I love in Vita Vea. Year before, they add Vernon Graves.
Not to mention 2 different corners.
Exactly. They bring back Brent Grimes. They add, like you said, Carlton Davis and MJ Stewart are the 2 corners. So this defense, I'll be honest, I like. It's the offense that has all my question marks because I even said to you that it feels like this team, like I feel the most sorry for Mike Evans because I feel like his talent is being wasted in Tampa Bay. I feel like it is being wasted with the Buccaneers. And I mean, the run game is going to be a different story this year. They get rid of the muscle hamster. Jaquiz right now is listed as the starter, but will Ronald Jones, who they drafted from USC, take that job? Or will it be kind of between Jaquiz, Jones, and Charles Sims that kind of does a quarterback by committee? And the thing I'll kind of ask you, and this is just off the top of my head, Ryan Fitzpatrick is behind Jameis Winston. If he plays well in the first 3 games and then Jameis comes out against, let's see, Chicago I know is week 4. Who's week 5? If he comes out against Chicago, maybe Atlanta, and then Cleveland and doesn't look good, by week 8 against Cincinnati, will the Bucs be bold enough to say, screw it, we're putting in Fitzpatrick because he played better in the first 3 games than Jameis has played in these last 3?
That was kind of my point before where I was saying if they can steal 2 of these games, I would be a little surprised if they went 0-3. I wouldn't be super surprised, but I'd be a little. I think they can steal a game against the Steelers.
Well, the question with that is Le'Veon going to play?
And that's a big part of it as well. But I think they can steal that one, with Fitzpatrick, if he can actually perform well, and he's had his moments where he's looked really good. He has a guy who can get you 12, 13, 1,400 yards with Mevins, and then have Deshaun Jackson, who, I know you're saying that he's past the prime, and that's not wrong, but he can still perform very well.
Yeah.
Got a great defense, got a new running back who hopefully is going to elevate that game as well. He can perform well with this. He performed good with worse when he was in New York for the Jets that one year. But really what they have, if Jameis starts to do poorly, the big thing for me is the head coach. So if Dirk Koetter is going to be on the hot seat.
They brought him in to be like, man, this Jameis Koetter connection is going to bring us to the promised land.
And then the first thing I see on Hard Knocks is him going, yeah, Jameis, I need you to not fuck it up, basically, to summarize what he said and paraphrase what he said. But, you look at that and it's just, I sit here and I see a coach that I think is very close to the hot seat. He is at 9-7, then goes 5-11. This is following 2 not really good years under Lovie Smith, and they got rid of him pretty quickly when they saw that defense kind of deteriorate. So over here, this guy who's supposed to come in here and be a great kind of guy who's going to get everything out of Jameis Winston, he is an offensive coordinator, an offensive mastermind. We're going to get it going, and then he doesn't for 3 years. You got to get rid of him. Then to have a new head coach come in, are they going to want to deal with Jameis? And what I would be scared with as a GM, not his abilities. Jameis can throw for 4,000 yards. He can throw for almost 30 touchdowns. Sure, he's a gunslinger. He's going to also turn the ball over, but it's all right. What you want more of the winning Brett Favre as opposed to the losing one. What I would be scared of as a GM is this going to be something that makes head coaches go, I don't know if I want to deal with the locker room issues that we have with this guy.
Not only the locker room
or
issues,
more the off the field, because the locker room seems to like him.
Well, but it goes back to me of when we were talking about Mariota versus Jameis when they were being drafted. And I remember those conversations because we were talking 1-2. You were on the side of the table of, I like Jameis Winston. I was on the other side of, like, I like Marcus Mariota. And we were a podcast divided for a while.
Yeah.
And for me, it was always the thing with Jameis is when it comes to the quarterback position, talent is great. Of course, you need to be at some sort of talent level for me to think about picking you. But for me, it comes down to, especially at the quarterback position, hey, you know what? Your talent is great, but it's what's above the shoulders that is way more important than what's below the shoulders. And with Jameis Winston, I never got the confidence that what was above the shoulders was better than what was below the shoulders. And
I don't think it needs to necessarily be better, but he needs a better coach to get it out of him. When I say that is I say with Jameis Winston, it's the making sure you're not being put in these situations. It's not a matter of fact of being intelligent on the football field, not with a football IQ. It's just a general IQ of you either A, you can't do that, or B, why are you being put in these situations? And one thing, this is specific to the Jameis Winston situation that I'm going to ask you is if he was a quarterback, would he still have a job right now? Because you think of all the other situations that are kind of related to Jameis Winston. I mean, you throw in Ray Rice. I throw in not Randy Gregory, Greg Hardy with the Cowboys when he was there. Look at LaShawn McCoy right now. If Jameis Winston wasn't a quarterback, are we kind of looking at this not like he's coming back for game 4 and more like a LaShawn McCoy of like, hey, is he not going to play this entire season? Are you talking about the suspension? If we think that the suspension would be longer?
Just in general, because it kind of looks like you can look at LaShawn McCoy and Jameis Winston right now. Many people with LaShawn McCoy's personal thing that's going on are like, oh, he might not even play this entire season due to this thing, not even a suspension, just because of what's going on. Whereas Jameis Winston, it's like, 3 games, which kind of seems like a slap on the wrist, if anything. Is it because he's a quarterback that we're looking at this
potentially,
it was a 3-game and he'll definitely be back?
Honestly, I think the thing about Jameis's part of it is really that there's no evidence. There's no smoking gun. You know,
there's no smoking gun in LaShawn McCoy's case. Like the big thing with Ray Rice is we had video evidence.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We have video evidence. We have pictures of Adrian Peterson's son.
Yeah.
We had things to really come down hard on these people. Jameis's thing is his word versus her word. That's all it is. And it's unfortunate that when it comes to sexual assault, that's what it comes down to time and time again is his word versus her word, whichever side is victim, whichever side is not, his, her, whatever it might be. So when we have this me versus you, there's not much you can do. And the NFL is so inconsistent in the way it does these suspensions. Somebody can get suspended a whole year for one thing, and somebody has something that some people are going to think is worse, and they get 2 games. You know, it's completely different, and there's really no rhyme or reason to it. I honestly kind of feel that with this being something that was older, I still feel that the NFL is more mad about not knowing about it than they were about what Jameis actually did allegedly had done.
Let me ask you this kind of to wrap everything up, and the one thing I will say for Bucs fans out there, you might think with this preview, you guys are harping too much on the Jameis part. That's a big thing of your season. Like that is going to impact your first 3 games and could
if you start finding out more stuff. If this is just a pattern right now with your quarterback, which it seems like it's been a pattern since college, eventually it's not 3 games. Eventually it's 6, 8, 10, 12. Eventually it's a whole season.
Well, and that's like me and you even listened to the interview. I think it was the one from the ACC championship game from the first time he won the national title, and in an interview he goes, coach just talking, it's like, I just got to do a better job of not putting myself in those situations and being better about that. And I'm thinking, you still haven't learned, have you? You learned enough to say it, and then it went whoop right out your head and into the wind. But the question I was going to ask you is, so Dirk Cotter, 9-7 in 2016, 5-11 this next year. Let's say he goes 2 wins, 3 wins this year, and is a top
without
5
a doubt,
pick.
he's gone.
Is he fired? Percentage 100%.
You have to be, in my eyes, you have to be at 7 wins with maybe barring some huge injury or Jameis magically gets suspended the entire year or something. You got to be at least 6 games to actually save your job. 7 games probably to save your job. So, yeah, I think that if there's anything under that, I expect him to be gone. And I don't know, is a new coach going to want to work with Jameis Winston? Is a new coach going to want his type of quarterback? Because we talk about it all the time. It doesn't even have to be a guy who has issues off the field. A lot of coaches just want their guy.
Unless it's like a John Gruden situation where John Gruden picked the Raiders situation because he liked Derek Carr. He wanted to work with him. And I mean, that's a good situation for them. But like, if I look at the Bucs as of right now, I know we got a couple of weeks until our official hold me to them predictions. But the only games I have them winning right now are Week 8 against the Cincinnati Bengals, which I know Buccaneer fans are going, whoa, you even got us losing to the Browns? What's going on, Ricky? But I also got you guys beating the Saints Week 14. That's it. Like, and even that Saint game, like, I'm not even confident in that one. I just picked it because I'm like, hey, you know what? Week 17, you guys beat the Saints in Tampa last year. So I'll give you that same kind of, okay, you can beat them at home. You're not beating them on the road. But, like, I look at every other game this year, and boy, do they have a hard schedule. The Saints twice, they're going to be a playoff team. The Falcons twice, they're going to be a playoff team. Well, the Saints, Falcons, and Panthers all could be playoff teams. Panthers probably won't. Falcons will definitely for me. Saints on the bubble of where they land. But like every other team, Eagles will be in the playoffs. Steelers will be in the playoffs. Redskins won't be in the playoffs, but they just got a new quarterback who is, I'll say, better than yours. The Giants will be better this season. 49ers could be a playoff team. Ravens could be a playoff team. Cowboys could be a playoff team. There are so many right on the line playoff teams or definite playoff teams on this schedule. And then the ones that aren't playoff teams, like the Bears and Browns, they got drastically better in my eyes from last year. The Bears adding Matt Nagy, we'll kind of see what his offense brings. And then the Browns with everything they brought in from free agency trades in the draft to where I'm like, this could be a 2-win season for the Buccaneers, and Bucs fans are sitting there going, something needs to change so we can get back to being a team that fights for this division.
And this is a team that just very recently proved they're willing to move on quick. How fast did they move on from Mike Glennon?
Lovie Smith.
How fast did they move on from Lovie Smith? They moved fast. Lovie got 2 years. Glennon had one chance, and that was it. And to be fair, they were number 1 overall, and they can take a quarterback. But if you get an opportunity like that, you might not pass up on it.
And I'm looking up really quick. I know Lovie went. So Lovie was 2 years with them. 2-14 his first year. 6-10 his next year. Boom, gets fired right away. And I still think that 9-7 year, they could have gone 9-7 with Lovie Smith. It wasn't like oh man, we got Dirk Cotter. That's the reason why we went 9-7, because it's like Dirk Cotter was with you. He was the offensive coordinator for you guys. And Mike Glennon had, you're right, he had really only 1 year. He had 2013, and then it was like, because he started 13, played 13, then it was like he played 6 games. He didn't play the entire 2015 year. Then he played only 2 games for Tampa, and then he was in Chicago and got replaced after 4 games for Mitch Trubisky, or the Trubiscuit, as I like to call him, here on the podcast. Any final thoughts about the Bucs before we move into the Atlanta Falcons?
I just mostly want to kind of survey Tampa Bay Buccaneers fans, not necessarily looking at his on-the-field abilities, but looking at his off-the-field abilities, our off-the-field shenanigans is a way to say it, making lighter of it than it should be made. Are you sick of it? Do you want to move on? Because I've heard kind of mixed things from a lot of Tampa Bay fans. Basically, it's two polar opposites. People are like, I can get over it. And then the other half are saying, no, if he was gone yesterday, it was too late. So I'm curious. I'm curious to know.
And just as a little bit of just one example from the draft that I was talking about for this year, Todd McShay's way too early mock draft, 2 quarterbacks in the first round. The first one off the board is at pick 17, and it's Drew Lock from Missouri. The next one doesn't even go until pick 26.
But there's a whole season of college football.
I get that at the time. I get that, but you look at it, and it's like, how many times have we looked at a way too early mock draft, and the first quarterback is not in even the top 15 of that? Or is it even in the top half of this draft? But this is where you guys come in. Let us know what you think down below in that comment section. Are we too low on the Bucs? Are we kind of harping on the Jameis Winston thing too much? Let us know what you guys think down below in that comment section. And Mark, let's move on into the next team, the hot Atlanta Falcons. And this is a team that, I'll be honest, I am really high on this team coming into 2018. One of the best things that I think they did all offseason was their first round pick in the draft, going with Calvin Ridley. Now they have Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley, Mohamed Sanu, 1, 2, 3 on that. Not in that order, 1, 2, 3. It's going to be, obviously, I think Sanu and Jones on the outside. Calvin Ridley will be your slot receiver in the middle. I will ask you, what are your thoughts early on about how good could this be a Falcons team that wins the South this year?
Well, it could be, because anybody really can win the South because they trade off all the time.
True.
It's hot potato. You got to pass that thing up.
So that means it's not going to be the Saints this year.
So you just got to keep passing it and see where it goes. But the problem that I'll get to, and then we can praise the Falcons because I like the Falcons a lot. It's just Sarkisian's offense. I just don't necessarily know that it gels with this whole team. I mean, it seems like people were struggling with it last year, and if they don't truly kind of push through and get the most out of this, like they had before, of course, when we got to watch the Atlanta Falcons storm their way into the Super Bowl.
Last year was the first year, though.
Yes.
I mean, it was the first year with the Sarkisian offense, so you're hoping that this offense has a little bit more grasp of it in year 2 compared to year 1.
And it's not like they were a terrible offense or anything like that. They were a good offense, but it was a noticeable step back from the league's best offense that took them into a Super Bowl. So they need to kind of get past that, and they need to get a little bit more, because this passing game, it's a great passing game. It's not going to necessarily get better. And apparently Julio wants more money, so he's going to be motivated to play extra hard. Calvin Ridley's a great addition. Matt Ryan, we all know that he's going to be a great quarterback. Getting the run game performing back to where it should be as well, and in not having injuries is going to be a huge part of that. This offense should be able to be really good, and then that defense we know was good as well. There's no real reason why the Atlanta Falcons aren't going to be considered quite probably a top 5 team in the NFC. They are right there with everybody. They're probably the most unloved out of all these top teams, but there's no reason, with assuming that the progress is made offensively in year 2 of this system, there's no reason why they shouldn't be able to be right up there with all the top teams of the NFC.
The thing that I am thinking about this team is I wonder if this is going to be eerily similar to what we saw in Kyle Shanahan's 2-year tender. Of course, it was only a 2-year tender or tenure with the Falcons before he goes to the 49ers being their head coach last year. But we saw a similar thing where this offense in 2015, Kyle Shanahan's first year, they were 7th in, I'm going off of total yardage, so they were 7th offense in 2015. They finished 8-8. That was Dan Quinn's first year. They don't go to the playoffs. Then that next year, they are now the number 2 offense in the league. They go 11-5. They win the South, and they go to the Super Bowl. They should have won that Super Bowl because they got complacent, but they were in the Super Bowl against Tom Brady. Could have almost won it that year. I'm not saying Super Bowl for the Falcons. I'm not going that far, but I wonder if we could see, and this was a 10-6 team last year that made the playoffs beat the Rams in the playoffs, where the Rams were a good team, lost to the Super Bowl champion Eagles, and came closer to beating them than my Minnesota Vikings did in the NFC Championship game. So I wonder if this team, first off, is going to be able to win the division, because that's going to be the big thing for this division, as I wonder whoever wins the division is safe, because obviously you make the playoffs automatically. The person that finishes second place in this division is going to be a coin toss, because I will bet you that there will be one team, I don't know who it's going to be, but one team in the NFC from any division will be 10-6 and miss the playoffs, just like the Lions did last year. That's how
it's
good
certainly
this
possible.
conference is.
It's certainly possible, as long as people don't just all beat each other up in the meantime. But for the Falcons, I mean, the nice thing about two of the teams in this division, I think, the Falcons and the Saints, they are such well-built teams as a whole. And I'm not necessarily dissing the Panthers on this one. I'll claw up all day. But I think the Panthers have a few little holes there that need to kind of be addressed before they can be looked at as one of these just complete teams. The Falcons have everything they need if they can take that step forward offensively. And I think one of the best things that they have going for them, which is always an underrated part of it, really is those five guys right up front on the line of scrimmage. The offensive linemen here, this is one of the best groups in the NFL. They're going to do everything to give Matt Ryan the time he needs to do everything he can with the, with the passing game, and then allow Freeman, allow Coleman to really get back to what they were 2 years ago when they were just dominated and running all over everybody. That's one thing they really need to get back to, is just that ability to run all day, use up a ton of clock, and free up these amazing weapons like Julio Jones, Sanu, who's a good wide receiver as well, and then the rookie Calvin Ridley. That's going to be hugely beneficial. And the thing that I think I like about the Atlanta Falcons' chances this year is really going to be the fact that they had last year to be that kind of Super Bowl slump a little bit. The hangover from, oh man, we blew a huge lead, we should have won it. That's all gone now. We can stop talking about it. Now we are back, and we are ready to come back and just actually play some football again without this, cinder block on our shoulders weighing us down. The Falcons can just move forward from here.
This might sound weird, but one of the big things I like about the Falcons this year, and if you've been watching all these previews, I'm usually the first one to bring this up. I like their schedule. Last year, the thing I didn't like about the schedule, which is weird because they went 3-1 against one of these divisions, but they played the NFC North and the AFC East were the two divisions that they had. And I know you're going to be saying, well, Ricky, they went 3-1 against the NFC North. Like they started the year, Bears, Packers, Lions, all wins against those teams. It was the AFC East that was a different story. They could beat the Jets, didn't beat Tyrod and the Bills, didn't beat, I don't even remember who was playing for the Dolphins at that point. It wasn't Ryan Tannehill because he was injured the whole year. And then they lost to Tom Brady in Foxborough, whereas I look at this year and the division that they play in right now, I'll be honest, 4-2 in the division for me. You'll split with the Saints, split with the Panthers. You'll beat the Bucs twice because the Bucs aren't going to be good in my mind this year. But then I look at the other divisions. AFC East, where the Steelers will be a tough one because that's on the road. The Bengals at home, you can beat them. The Browns on the road, you can beat them. And then you get the Ravens at home. You could beat them. They could be 3-1 against the AFC North, just like they were 3-1 against the NFC North last year. The question is, what do you do against the NFC East, which will be a tough division, but I think they can beat the Redskins. I actually have them in the first game beating the Eagles because they almost beat them in Philly last year in the playoffs. It was only a 5-point game. And then you get the Cowboys at home. You also get the Giants at home as well. I think in both of those divisions, call me crazy, if they go 3-1 against both of those divisions, all right, you're sitting there 6-2 add that 4-2 from the division that I talked about, you're already at 10 wins. Then it just decides for me, all right, what am I doing against the Packers and the Cardinals? You can at least go 1-1 in those games, if not 2-0.
Yeah, and the thing that's interesting with, of course, this Cardinals game is probably going to have the rookie by this point, I would imagine. I mean, it's week 15.
By week 15, if Josh Rosen ain't starting, there's a problem.
Yeah, I mean,
unless Bradford's
is healthy
and playing well.
That's the big thing, because health is really what's going to knock him out.
It's not going to be Mike Glennon. We know that. The Ginger Giraffe has no chance.
Want to know one thing I love about this Atlanta Falcons offseason?
What?
Was getting Isaiah Oliver, the cornerback, second round. Mm-hmm. I think it's a great addition. I mean, it's already
You took him in the first round of our combined mock, didn't you?
I like him. I like him a lot. He is somebody who, dropped further than he should have, I believe. He is somebody who actually can make a big difference on an already good defense. He's going up. I mean, this team is going to see a lot of really talented quarterbacks just in the division, but also just this year in general you mentioned all the other teams that they're facing. You need somebody who can be that talented, and it doesn't have to be Oliver needs to be a shutdown corner. Nobody's going to throw on this side of the field anymore. He's not a guy who needs to follow the best wide receiver around the field. He just needs to lock down into his area. Doesn't necessarily even need to be the absolute, without a doubt starter, because they've got good corners. They got Alford. They've got Trufant already. They can allow him to kind of ease his way in.
They've even got guys behind him. Like, I'm looking at the right side. You've got Trufant. The next corner on the depth chart is Justin, I'm going to say the last name wrong because I always do, Bethel. You got him, who used to be with Arizona, I think it was a while ago. I look at that and I go, all right, you might even be third on the depth chart somewhere, be like a nickel situation guy. As long as you can play well in those situations, this defense should be fine. Like, this to me is how it comes down is this team and the Saints are the most well-rounded team. The Panthers, big question will be Cam Newton. The Bucs are going to stink. Like, that is your TLDR, too long didn't read, for the NFC South.
I think that the Falcons, a nice quick summary since you just did this as well. They weren't far away from being able to win this division last year, even though they were third in the division. They weren't far from it. They just need to take that one step forward. They did everything they needed to do, I think, in the offseason to be able to take that step forward. The Saints are going to be better this year. The Panthers, I think, are going to be kind of consistent with where they were last year, maybe take a little bit of a step back. But the hard thing, of course, is just the NFC in general is always going to be a challenging division. But I really don't see a reason why the Atlanta Falcons can't come right back and either win this division or get that fifth, maybe sixth spot in the wild card.
See, I am more on the other side of this. I think that we are looking at the NFC South divisional champions. I'll say it. Like, this is a team that I think has the offense, has the quarterback, has the rushing attack, has the receivers that you like about it. Now, if we're going to talk to Bears fans, they're going to say, whoa, whoa, whoa. This team took a big hit because they don't have Taylor Gabriel anymore.
That's right.
Like,
Turbo.
Anyone from Chicago is saying, whoa, the Falcons are a lesser team.
They're missing Turbo.
Because they don't have Turbo out there, but they did get Calvin Ridley. So, I mean, we'll see. We'll see what the Rook has and if he can fill the shoes of Taylor Gabriel. But I like this team. Julio Jones is one of the best wide receivers. Like, and they even saying one of the best kind of feels like I'm giving him a slap in the face. He's probably definite top 5, maybe even top 3 wide receiver in this league. You have Matt Ryan, who is a very good quarterback, one of the best that we have in this league. To me, the difference is what can you do against the divisions outside of the division of your own, against the AFC North, against the NFC East, and really more of that question is the NFC East, because I'll be honest, right now, the only team I got them losing to is the Giants, just because I had to have them lose to somebody in that division. I didn't think they were going to go 4-0. But the thing is, if they can go 3-1 against those two, or even 4-0 against those two, they will set themselves up for a good position to finish with 11, 12, maybe even 13 wins. Not even just win this division, but this could be a team that we're talking about being a first-round bye team, number 1, number 2 seed in the NFC.
It's possible, but I think it's going to be a tough one to get that one of those buys. I mean, because you got the
Eagles.
The Eagles
the Vikings,
were already really great.
The Rams.
Exactly. Rams, the Vikings. You got a lot of these teams that are here, but
I thought you were going to totally gloss over the
No, the Vikings are good.
I said Vikings, and I just thought that Bears fan in you was just going to be like, oh, let's gloss over them.
Well, Vikings are a fine team. They can have a spot, I guess. But, there's a lot of teams in there, and it's going to be kind of tough, especially when you're in a division that's already difficult. Mm-hmm. Not that the Vikings aren't also in a difficult division.
Yeah.
But it's just one of those things where it's going to be a challenge because of your schedule, because of where you play. That makes it a challenge. But all you really need is to get into the playoffs, and there's no doubt in my mind that the Falcons can. Mm-hmm. It's pretty much that simple to me of they made the right additions offensively, defensively to an already good team that was adjusting a little bit after having lost an important offensive coordinator who everything was gelling really nicely with. Mm-hmm. So if you can kind of just move that step forward, keep it going, you're going to be right there. You're going to be right where you need to be. And last year at the 6th seed with 10-6, they were the 6th seed, yeah, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, 6th seed with 10-6. That's not a bad place to be.
No.
That was not a bad place to be at all.
And I mean, even the thing like you say, 6th seed at 10-6, I keep bringing this up, and I will again. The NFC was so loaded. The 6th seed was at 10-6. The 7th seed, who's the first team out of the playoffs, was 10-6. So it's like the NFC was not no cupcake conference last year. And I think it's going to be the same thing this year, where we could see the top 7 teams in this division, or in this conference. I keep saying division. In this conference, all have double-digit wins. And it's like you're the 7th team, and it's like, what the hell? We got double-digits wins. 10 wins is supposed to Remember the days where it was like you're playing Madden, you're like, cool, I got 10 wins. Don't have to worry, I'm in the playoffs. I don't have to worry, my team's going to be in the playoffs. Not no longer if you're in the NFC.
If you're in the AFC, you're good to go.
Yeah, I mean, AFC... I could see this year 5 double digits, but let's be honest. It's going to be double digits win the division and probably like a 9-7, 8-8 make the wild card for the AFC. And then it's like, all right, let's just see between the Jaguars, Patriots, and Steelers who can come out of this conference. Any final thoughts you got on the Falcons before we move on into the Carolina Panthers?
I mean, I think we kind of summarized a lot of it. Calvin Ridley, I'm very excited to watch him, possible Offensive Rookie of the Year candidate.
I'm gonna really like him in the slot for this team, because I feel like it's gonna be with Julio and Sanu out there. Julio's gonna get the double teams. Sanu will get attention, and he's gonna have games where the middle of the field is just gonna open up because these secondaries are gonna want to focus more on Sanu and Jones, to where Ridley with his big body is just going to be like, hey, I'm just going to work the middle of the field. And I feel like Matt Ryan is just going to keep finding him for some big yards. Fantasy football, put him in as I'm going to say a sleeper, because even though he was one of the higher rookies in the draft, I wonder where people will draft him.
I think he's going to go high
in the draft. Do you think so?
I mean, he's not going to be like, first 3 rounds, but I think he's going to be a guy who's going to be there like 5-6.
Especially with how we do our draft in our league. That rookie round,
he's going to be a hot guy.
1, 2, 3 in that rookie round. But this is where you guys come in. Let us know what you guys think down below in the comment section about the Atlanta Falcons. Are they going to win the division? Will they be a playoff team this year? What are you excited for? What are you not excited for? Will they make that next step in Sarkisian's second year as OC? Let us know what you think down below in that comment section. And Mark, we are moving on into the next team, and that next team is the Carolina Panthers. And before we get into this preview, I believe you have to do something that you love to do every time we talk about the Panthers.
Claw up.
You did it a little bit too soon. I was setting you up for it, but you still clawed
I was excited.
Up like
sometimes
a champ.
You prematurely claw up.
Premature clawing up
It happens, man. It happens to the best of us.
I was trying to make it work, but the elation part wasn't there. But a premature claw up for Mark over there on the other side of the table because he's just so excited to talk about the Carolina Panthers. And the first question I want to ask you about these said Panthers is about Cam Newton, because you mentioned it before we started recording. You were looking at this team, you're like, man, this passing attack was not good last year. They're a team that, first off, traded Calvin Benjamin away. Their leading receiver last year was they had Devin Funchess, but they also had Ted Ginn Jr. Ted Ginn Jr. is now gone. Torrey Smith, they get him via a trade, I believe, this offseason. I believe that's when they got him this offseason because he was with the Eagles last year. They get Torrey Smith. They get DJ Moore via the draft. Christian McCaffrey's still in that backfield, although Jonathan Stewart no longer there. They get C.J. Anderson, so now it's McCaffrey, Artis Payne, C.J. Anderson, and then Elijah Hood in that backfield. What are your thoughts on this Panther team, Cam Newton in this offense? Can they turn it around this year?
It's kind of rough because the running game was really good last year, and I expect the running game will just still be really good. The defense is good here. The problem that they have, like you were mentioning, it's just that passing game. It's just not good enough. And the wide receivers have never been amazing, and even when they have good ones, like Benjamin has not really been the healthiest of wide receivers out there. So it's just a kind of difficult thing to see and say, man, they've got this really talented quarterback. They got this great running game, great defense. Why don't you give him some weapons? Why don't you give him something to throw the ball to?
I forgot to mention another big addition to this passing game, to this offense, that I believe might help change your mind just a little bit, or not even change your mind, just add into it. They have a new OC this year. Do you know who it is?
Tell me who it is.
Norv Turner is now the OC. After taking a year off last year, after being the OC for the Vikings, I believe for only 2 years. He was with us 3 years. He was with us 2014 to 2016. Norv Turner is another new addition to this offense, being the OC for the Panthers in 2018.
I have a big question when it comes to the offense here for the Carolina Panthers. And it's a question of, I hope Cam Newton's going to be healthy. He needs this Kevlar vest that he's got because nobody gets hit more than Cam Newton. Nobody gets hit hard more than Cam Newton. And
I mean, he's also he is the definition of Superman. He gets into an accident, flips his truck, walks out, just brushes off the shoulders. I'm Superman.
The problem for Superman Cam Newton here is it's the blind side. Matt Khalil is not someone I would want to rely on to not get hit.
Talking about former Viking.
Yeah, right? He's someone who I would have no faith in that he's going to protect me at all. So Cam Newton, a guy who gets hit a lot, who gets hit very hard. He's been the focus of conversation for over a year now of just are we not correctly protecting our mobile quarterbacks in the NFL, who is so concerned about player safety, so they say. Cam Newton's one of those guys who always kind of gets the raw end of the deal here, and he's a big guy. He's built like Big Ben, where he's not going to get hurt, but Big Ben has been hurt, and he has been a guy who has not been able to do the things he used to be able to do in his career. Cam Newton's getting to that point now where, what is he, 29? Yeah, 29 years old, where eventually you're going to start slowing down a little bit.
Well, and
some of those hits are going to come up and kind of eat away at you.
And it's important that you say that, because one of the things that Norv Turner is going to bring to this offense, like I was looking at an article, and they were saying that Norv Turner is going to bring a lot more drop back passes to this Panther offense. And for me, the big question with Cam Newton is when you look at the quarterbacks in this league. I mean, I'm just going to go through the playoff quarterbacks, and some of them better than others. Tom Brady, Big Ben, this is from last year, Blake Bortles, Alex Smith, Marcus Mariota, Tyrod Taylor. About maybe 3 of those, I mean, Big Ben you can kind of say is flexible. He's only
not so much anymore.
He's not as mobile as he used to be. I'd put him more in the drop back really the only ones that are mobile with air quotes were Tyrod and Marcus Mariota. They're at the bottom. The other guys are at the top. Then you look at the NFC, Carson Wentz or Nick Foles. Carson Wentz, isn't, yeah, he runs sometimes, but he's not as mobile, recklessly mobile as he was in college. He's more of a drop back, if it breaks down, I can run forward.
Well, it helps that you have an amazing offensive line and great wide receivers.
You look at Case Keenum. He wasn't really mobile last year. You look at Jared Goff. He wasn't a mobile quarterback last year. You look at Drew Brees. He definitely ain't a mobile quarterback. You look at Matt Ryan. He's not a mobile quarterback. The only one to make the playoffs last year that was a true mobile is Cam Newton. The question is, as you are getting older, can you make that transition into being a successful drop-back passer? Because the more you get older, the more you can't rely on that athleticism. And with how Cam Newton's numbers are as a true drop-back passer, it's going to be one of those things where it's like, man, he's just not that good with the drop-back passing.
Well, he can be good drop-back.
I'm just saying he needs to get a little bit better at it, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, but I mean, some of his best years have been around 38 to 4,000 yards.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I mean, 2015, his best year, he was not necessarily yardage-wise, but he was 35 touchdowns to 10 interceptions. I'd be happy with that as a drop-back passer. I don't need him to be a 5,000-yard passer.
Mm-hmm.
I just need him to be successful and efficient. Now, of course, 2015, he also ran for 600-plus yards. But even without some of that, they still had one of the better running games with just their running backs as well. Mm-hmm. You mentioned the drop-back passing, but that's exactly my point. I don't trust Matt Khalil.
Mm-hmm.
I don't trust the entire left side of this offensive line to keep him healthy. So, sure, drop-back passes are great, but when you've got less than 3 seconds or just about 3 seconds to throw the ball, there's not much you can do with that. That's the thing that kind of worries me for Cam Newton and the Carolina Panthers of what can stall them.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they still have the potential. If they can move towards just kind of being very fast, very just West Coast with this offense, get the ball out of your hands really fast. Don't really worry about they're coming to get me.
That's
what North Turner
has been more West Coast.
Yeah, that's what he really does it pretty efficiently. But you really got to, when you don't have a good offensive line, West Coast is a little hard to pull off at times because you don't need a ton of time for it to develop, but you just need enough. And fortunately for the Panthers, having a really good run game is going to help at least keep the defenses honest.
That's why I'm focusing on 3 guys on this offense.
Mm-hmm.
The first one's Greg Olsen. I think that if he stays healthy, he is going to flourish the most in this Norv Turner offense. Because I actually want to do some quick research. I probably should have done this before the podcast, but you had I said 2014 to 2016 was when he was with Minnesota. I just want to look really quick to see if Kyle Rudolph was leading the receiving. So 2014 for the Vikings, the leading receiver, it was not Kyle Rudolph. Kyle Rudolph only had 34 targets. I think he was hurt that year. Greg Jennings was our leading receiver. But then 2015 wasn't Kyle Rudolph again. It was Stephon Diggs, but Kyle Rudolph was
this
second
isn't working out for
on
you.
the team. No, it's not. And then 2016, just to see, it was Thielen, and Kyle Rudolph was second off. But the point I can make from that is that the Vikings have 2 really good wide receivers, 2 wide receivers that I would say are better than the top 2 wide receivers for the Panthers. And I'm sorry if that's a dig at Torrey Smith, but it's kind of a little dig.
You're saying back in that
Torrey
2014, 2015 team? I wouldn't say so back then.
I would still say Thielen and Diggs have been those production-wise.
But Thielen was productive last year. North Turner wasn't there last year.
No. But I'm saying we've seen progression out of Thielen for this year. So he led the team in 2016, got better in 2017. But yes, that was with Pat Shurmur's offense. The thing I think is Greg Olsen's going to be the main benefactor from Norv Turner because, yes, Torrey Smith is a good wide receiver, but I don't think he's the Torrey Smith of old. Devin Funchess, to me, I've never fell in love with Devin Funchess. He's just been all right for me. And that's why number 2, the second player I'm focusing on, is DJ Moore. I feel like people are going to focus on Torrey Smith. They're going to focus on Devin Funchess. Hell, they'll even focus on Curtis Samuel, to where DJ Moore is going to have a sneaky surprising rookie year, to where a lot of people who aren't focusing on Carolina are going to turn their heads and go, whoa, who's this guy in Carolina that's really tearing it up? And then the third guy I think that will benefit from this Norv Turner West Coast style is the running back Christian McCaffrey. More so also because he doesn't have to compete with Jonathan Stewart for carries and can be the if de facto number 1 running back for the Panthers.
Well, I mean, certainly that's going to help as a running back, not having someone to be a committee with, essentially. But
and he's also the perfect West Coast quarterback, because he's kind of like a receiver at the running back position.
I mean, it certainly helps. I think what I want to see out of Christian McCaffrey, and I liked Christian McCaffrey last year, is I want to see him really own the running back portion of being a running back. And I mean, it's nice to have the pass catching ability as well, but I want to see him start to really own the actual being a running back. With the Carolina Panthers and with DJ Moore, I don't necessarily think that many defenses, fans maybe, but I don't really think that defenses are going to sleep on him. I think he walks in here being quite probably the second best wide receiver on this roster. I don't want to discount Funchess. I mean, he was an 800-yard wide receiver last year. He did well for an offense that wasn't that great. Cam only had like 3,200 maybe, 2,300 maybe, or 3,300 passing yards. So it wasn't an explosive passing game last year anyways. I mean, it's one of the worst passing games in the NFL.
Does it get better? Does the passing game get better, and by how much do you think it'll get better?
Well, it's hard to say how much, because it's hard to know how prominent the running game is still going to be.
Because the one thing I will say, and Saint fans will, like, this whole year, Saints fans will bring up the play that happened in Minnesota and use that as a chip on their shoulder. But I remember watching that first-round game against the Panthers and the Saints, and that was a game where there was, I can't even remember who it was. I think he was a rookie wide receiver. Yeah, I can't even remember who the wide receiver was in the end zone. He goes to catch it on the side of the end zone, and it just goes right through his hands. And it was a blatant drop, to where it's like that would have swung the game for the Panthers. And to me, that's what I feel like. This wide receiver core needs to be better, because, yeah, I know I'm picking out one game, but this wide receiver core cost them their season last year when they played the Saints in the Superdome. Is it still Superdome? In New Orleans.
It's also just important to recognize that it has to be better when it was, like I said, one of the worst passing games in the NFL last year. So you got to be better than that. And DJ Moore, I think, is hopefully an answer to that question. They also go ahead and draft a tight end in the 4th round, so they know that they need to improve passing the ball. They also are looking for Josh Norman's replacement, drafting a couple of cornerbacks in rounds 2 and 3. They're looking for something to get back to when they were that 2015 Super Bowl going team. Not quite winning, but going there at least. They were very, very dominant on all facets of the football game there.
And the thing that I'll, yet again, bring up the schedule, I'm going to use the same thing I said for the Falcons with the Panthers, because it's the same schedule. It's almost the same schedule minus 2 teams. Division, I think the Panthers keep even with the Falcons, like I said, for the Falcon record. They'll beat the Bucs twice, because the Bucs are going to be bad this year. They'll split with the Falcons, losing the road games, winning the home games. They'll split with the Saints, winning the home game, losing the road game. For me, the AFC North I'll start with. I see them 2-2. The Ravens, I don't think the Panthers are as good as the Falcons in that matchup. Ravens get the win, although it's in Carolina. And the Steelers, you get them on the road. If the Falcons can't even beat the Steelers on the road, you on Thursday night on a shortened week are not going to beat the Steelers in Week 10. That, to me, brings the question of, like I said for the other one, NFC East, where yeah, I could see them going 3-1 against that division. Cowboys will be the biggest question, but Eagles is a loss. Giants and Redskins could be wins. And then it comes down to, yet again, like I said, for the Falcons, what do you do against the Lions and the Seahawks? Yeah, you get the Seahawks at home. Lions are on the road, but those could even be 2 games that the Panthers lose. So this is a team, depending on the schedule being a little tougher for them, they could be like a 8-8, 9-7 team, or if they're really good, could be a 10-6, 11-5 team.
Yeah, this team has one of the bigger ranges. You know, like you mentioned, you know, it can be anywhere from an 8-8 team to an 11-win team. So there's a huge range in that, and so much of it's going to rely on, is the running game still as good with a loss? And can these wide receivers really step up and be something that Cam needs? And is Cam going to be on his 2 feet, or is he going to be on the ground?
Yeah.
You know, defensively, they're good. I want to see how these 2 corners, these 2 rookies are going to be, if they're going to make a noticeable difference to this defense. But, you know, it's just going to have to be a little bit of a learning year. I would not be surprised to see the Panthers miss out on the playoffs this year as they really kind of learn this new offense and really kind of gel and adapt as a team. One more year and they're right back in the hunt.
And yeah, for me, it's like this team right now, I'm going to be honest, although I think the offense will be better than it was last year, I'm kind of leaning towards that bottom end of that range. Like I said, more of the 8-8, 9-7 side of it than I am the 10-6, 11-5 side of it, because I just look at the schedule, and maybe it's because we just came off of the Falcons, and I'll be honest, out of this division, I am the highest on the Falcons. Spoiler for Saint fans who are waiting for their preview as well. But I mean, this Panther team could be, it's like, it's weird. If they play well, they could be a playoff team. But if they don't play well in the bigger games, like those playoff games, the game against the Steelers, the Eagles, I'm going to even throw out the Giants and the Cowboys in there, the Lions, the Seahawks, this could be a team where it's like they're almost like the Seahawks or Cowboys from last year, where it's like, all right, we're 9-7, didn't make the playoffs. Wow, this was not a good year for us, and we got to go into the draft to kind of get more weapons and see if we can make a splash next year in our division in this kind of tougher conference. Any final thoughts on the Panthers before we move on and end the podcast with the New Orleans Saints?
Claw up.
That's it? Just a little claw up. This is where you guys come in. Let us know what you think down below in that comment section. What are you excited for with the Panthers? What are you not excited for? What is your weak link? And how do you think this season is going to go? Let us know what you think down below in that comment section. And Mark, let's move on and end the podcast with the best team from last year. Although, and I'm going to piss off Saint fans right now, and this is just a fun jab at you guys. Don't get angry and click off the video. It was a great year, but the ending was the real best part, right? Right? Real best part? I have to, my Viking fan in me has to give you one last jab before you use that
before
as
they
bulletin,
remind you of the NFC Championship game.
Before they use that as bulletin board material and kind of like, that's the thing I want to start with, is I feel like this team, and some may say I'm crazy for thinking this, I think this team is going to use that game, the hurt from that game, from that loss, because really they had the game intact. I was sitting there as a Vikings fan going, oh, fuck, another game that we lost. Like, because the last game I believe I remembered before this one was basically the one against the Seahawks, where we should have won that one, but Blair Walsh, boom, going to kick it to the left and miss that kick.
Yeah, why not?
In that really shitty game of a football game before we had our actual new stadium. I was even surprised that the Vikings won that game, and I'm a Vikings fan. Do you think this Saints team uses that as bulletin board material, uses that as a chip on their shoulder to kind of go through this season and have a successful 2018?
I mean, they can, sure. I think what it really comes down to is it just comes down to a dumb mistake being made by a defense that was young. And they have a year under the belt. They've learned. They essentially have gotten better. I mean, you look at the Saints last year, great offense, great running game, passing game, great defense. The only thing that I would say, were really kind of needing a little bit more of is that pass rush, which they believe they got with Marcus Davenport in the first round. So they went and they got the thing that they felt like they needed.
Traded up to go get them too. Like, they're not going to have a first round pick this year. They made a big deal.
Yeah, they made a big deal because they truly believe that Marcus Davenport, and it's not necessarily just him, but this pass rush is that missing piece that's going to propel them into a Super Bowl. And hopefully for the Saints fans out there, a Super Bowl win. They've got everything they need. I mean, really, you look at this offense and it's phenomenal. Look at this defense. It's young, but it's kind of scary looking at the moment, and it's going to get even better. They've got such a great, well-put-together team that there's a reason why I was sitting there last year thinking that, hey, this team's going to win a Super Bowl. I was wrong, but that was my prediction at the time, that they would go ahead and do it. Now, they have a very real opportunity to do it. You know, we're going to get into things like the schedule and all that good stuff, but you really take a look at this team, and I don't think that much has changed that's going to make me feel nervous.
To me, the biggest question I have for this team isn't even a big question because of who they play in those 4 weeks and because they still have Alvin Kamara. But my first big question for this team is, how are you going to do first 4 games of the year with Mark Ingram being out? Because this team obviously isn't at full strength unless they have both Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara out there. That's when I think this rushing attack is at its best with how they complement each other. But, yet again, when you look at it, Bucs without Jameis Winston, yeah, good luck, Tampa Bay, trying to beat this Saints team. The Browns, you should be able to beat the Browns even without Mark Ingram. Then it becomes the 2 question games where it's like the Falcons on the road, the Giants on the road. Those are the only 2 games without Mark Ingram. I go, okay, how are you going to do in those games? Besides that, this to me is going to be honestly the easiest preview because not even looking at the roster like in depth like we did for the other ones, I'm going to jump straight to the schedule and kind of talk about that, as I'm going to go on the same theme that I did for the other 2. AFC North, the only team they are losing to, if any, to the AFC North, they're going 3-1, 4-0. Because it's either, okay, what are you going to do against the Steelers in my mind? Like, this is a team, you can beat the Browns, you can beat the Bucks, or not the Bucks. Yeah, you can beat the Bucks, but you can beat the Bengals, and you get the Ravens. Yeah, it's on the road, but you're coming off of a bye at that point. The Steelers are the only big one.
It's playing a home game, though.
Yeah, and you're playing them week 16, so that might even be a win. The NFC East, I got them 3-1 right now. Spoiler alert and shocker, the only team I have them losing to is the defending Super Bowl champion Eagles. The biggest question schedule-wise that is far different from the Panthers, very far different from the Falcons. Like I mentioned with the Falcons, their 2 just random games are the Cardinals and the Packers, which I think are very winnable games because the Falcons beat the Packers last year, and the Cardinals could be starting a rookie quarterback. Or not the Falcons. Yeah, the Cardinals could be starting a rookie quarterback when they play the Falcons. The Saints, they get the Vikings in Minnesota, who, yeah, I know Vikings fans will say, yeah, we should have beat you so we can win that one. Still is going to be a tough one in prime time. And then you play the Rams. Yes, it's at home, but it's the LA Rams in primetime. So, I mean, for me, that's the big question mark. How do you do in those 2 games? And can you get a steal against the Steelers, get a steal against the Eagles without having a team get a steal against you?
Yeah, I mean, the Saints, they have such a powerful team. There's so many powerful teams in the NFC. But they have such a great team offensively and defensively. When they go in here, this is a team that can go 5-1, 4-2 in the division. It really just depends on how the Carolina Panthers are going to show up this year with this hopefully retooled passing game that they have. So how is that going to be an impact? But then it's going to be kind of some of these, I guess, the big boys of the NFC because they get to play them in the Vikings, in the Rams. The Cowboys might be coming back because just a couple of years ago now, they were one of the big ones here. And of course the Eagles. They have all these, and the Falcons are there too. They have all these teams that are really big, prominent teams. They get to go up against all of them. The only one they really don't get to have a chance to go up against is the Green Bay Packers. Mm-hmm. So they're going to face pretty much any team that they play in the playoffs. They're going to see them in the regular season.
Maybe this is just me being a Vikings fan and having that bias come out. I'll ask you because you're the Bear fan and have no bias to either the Packers or the Vikings.
Well, I don't like the Packers.
Am I wrong in saying if I was a Saints fan, although Aaron Rodgers is Aaron Rodgers, I'd rather play the Packers than the Vikings because the Vikings are more of a complete team than the Packers?
Well, the Vikings are a more complete team than the Packers. I need to see Kirk Cousins play for the Vikings before I can answer that question. Because if I'm sitting there right now, I'm always going to be more scared of Aaron Rodgers than anybody but Tom Brady. Mm-hmm. That's just as simple as it is. If I got the choice of playing anybody, with the exception of the Patriots, or playing Aaron Rodgers, I'm taking anybody. In that case,
Patriots are also a better coach team than the Packers.
That's why I took them out of it.
Yeah.
So they get to play Jared Goff in the Rams. They're going to play Matt Ryan in the Falcons, Kirk Cousins in the Vikings in that defense. They're going to play the Cowboys with Ezekiel Elliott having his full season. They're going to play Carson Wentz's Eagles, or as we might want to say, Nick Foles, the Super Bowl MVP's Eagles. That's just a little joke. But
we got a comment on one of the videos. I think it was from last week or one of the preview videos where the commenter basically goes, so what, Nick Foles wins a Super Bowl and he becomes when did Nick Foles become one of the greatest quarterbacks in the NFL?
He's a Super Bowl MVP. No, it's just fun to say it. But he is as good as Peyton Manning
because he tied that record against
If
Peyton
only
Manning.
He can get one more Super Bowl ring, he will officially be as good as Peyton Manning. No questions about it.
Do you think that would kill Peyton Manning, or he wouldn't lose any sleep over it?
He wouldn't lose any sleep over it.
He would both have. Think about that. Eli and Nick Foles would then be better than him, or as good as him.
As good as him.
Well, yeah. Eli's better than him, I think.
No, 2-2.
Yeah, but he beat Tom Brady. Something Peyton Manning could never do.
Sure. Sure. That's the one thing he's got on his brother. The only thing he's got. But he goes, but I was never benched for Geno Smith. So
True.
There is that. But yeah, the Saints here, they were such a good team last year. Like I said, that was my Super Bowl team last year. I thought they were, when it got to the playoffs time, I'm like, all right, Saints, they're going to win it all. They didn't, but they did a lot to make you excited, to make you happy. I don't believe that Ingram being gone for 4 games is going to matter in the slightest. Buccaneers, Browns, throw it away. Falcons is this is the away game for you. So even if you lose it, I think there's a good chance you split with the Falcons anyways.
2 away games. The Giants is an away game too.
Well, I'm talking about just the Falcons.
Oh, okay.
Because you're going to play the Falcons again at home. So I think if you lose that Falcons game, whatever. There's a good chance you're going to lose it anyways because they're a really good team as well. Yeah. You're not you're not happy, but you're not upset if you lose to the Falcons. Now, if you lose on the road to the Giants, you might be a little bit upset as it stands right now because we just don't necessarily know if the Giants are going to bounce back with this new whole. Well, Pat Shurmur is the new head coach, but a lot of new things there.
And I'll be completely honest. Even if you had with Mark Ingram, without Mark Ingram, my thought about the first 4 games are the same. You win the first 2, you lose the third one. The fourth one, I could see you winning it. I'm leaning that way, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Giants won. With Mark Ingram, without Mark Ingram, that is my thought process for the first 4.
The defense of the Giants, to me, is not at a level to where I'm sitting there going, I need Ingram and Kamara. No, I think you can win with just Kamara. Just fine.
That's why I'm saying with either or, my thought process is the same.
Falcons are the ones that have a tough defense.
I'm going to lean the way of the Saints against the Giants, but I would not be surprised if you told me, the Giants won that game. I'd be like, oh, okay. I didn't pick it, but I'm not shocked.
I'd be a little surprised.
I would. It depends how they were playing in those first 3. It's going to be week 4. What do we see from the first 2 years?
Obviously.
Our first 2 seasons. How's
I just
Saquon
say, as
looking?
we stand right now, I would be a little surprised if the Giants won that game.
Yeah, right now, I'll be honest. I have them 3-1 in those first 4. So it's not like I'm saying, they're going to be 2-2 in that. But for me, I wonder how much of to me, the game that I am circling, if I'm circling one game on this schedule, it's no shocker which one I'm circling. Can you guess which one I'm going to say?
The Vikings game.
The Viking game. Like, as a Saints fan, that would be the one that I would circle because...
That's your revenge game.
For me, it's not just that. It's based off of where I could see this team. That game, that one game to me could be the linchpin in this season to where this team right now, their lowest that I see them is 9-7, 10-6. Their ceiling, name it. Like, I could honestly, I don't think they will, but I could see this team being 13-3. More so if you said they were 11, 12 win team, I'd be like, yeah, I could see that. What, did they shock wins and get wins over the Vikings and the Rams or like the Eagles or the Steelers, one of those winning playoff teams that we expect? But like that Viking game could be the answer to, oh, we were 9-7 off. We would have won that Viking game 10-6. We could have been in the playoffs. Or will it be we were 10-6 and we were a wild card team. Man, if we would have won that Viking game, we could have been 11-5 and possibly won the division or had a better seed.
They have a bit of a stretch. I mean, they're playing the Vikings. They're going to be on the road against the Vikings. They're going to be at home against the Rams, but still the Rams are another one of those teams everyone's looking at in the NFC. Skip the Bengals. Eagles, you're home again, but that's your defending Super Bowl champion. I mean, you're right there in the thick of it. And if you really want to go a couple steps further, you got the Falcons and the Cowboys coming up after that.
I would say week 7 to week 13 is the stretch I go to, minusing week 10, because that's a for sure win for me because I'm not high on the Bengals. The Ravens, although I would pick the Saints in that one,
that's an upset
the Ravens
game right there.
could be a trap game for the Saints. The Vikings and Rams will be tough because they're going to be, I expect both of those teams to be winning teams, playoff teams in the NFC. And then week 11 through 13, Eagles I expect to be in the playoffs. Falcons I expect to be in the playoffs. Cowboys I expect to be fighting for that 6th seed. Yeah. So it's like you're playing week 7 to week 13. You're playing 6 games against teams that could have winning records at the end of the year and all could be playoff teams at the end of the 2018 season.
I mean, as it stands for me right now, besides the Packers, they're playing the rest of the playoff teams in the NFC in their regular season. They're playing the Eagles. They're playing the Vikings. They're going to play the Rams. They're playing everybody right here, and, of course, the Falcons. So they're going to see them all. The exception is that Packers team. And if it's not the Packers, then there's a good chance it could be the Cowboys, and they're going to play them. So or not the Cowboys, the Panthers. You know, they're all right there. They're going to play all these teams. They do not have an easy way into the playoffs, but this team is so good, I'm very confident in them at least getting a 10-6 record.
And that's why, going back to my first point, I wonder if this team will use what happened last year as that chip on their shoulder to kind of muscle through this tough schedule. Because I'll be honest, out of all the teams that we've looked through in this division, this is the only schedule that if you gave me the last 3 we looked at, I'm going to take the Bucs and kind of throw it out because I don't see them being a winning team. The other 3 I can see them possibly being playoff teams. You gave me those schedules, I would look at this one and go, well, this is the one I'm completely throwing away because I don't want any part of that. I don't want any part of that one, mainly because of, and I know what you're saying, oh, Ricky, but the AFC North and the NFC East are the same. The division is the same. Exactly. To me, the biggest difference are those 2 games because the Saints get the Vikings and the Rams. We already looked at the Panthers. They get the Seahawks and the Lions, who, spoiler alert for me, both of those teams are not going to be playoff teams this year. This is the beginning of the end for the Seahawks with Pete Carroll. And the Lions, I just don't think they're going to be as good as they were last year in Matt Patricia's first year. And then with the Falcons, and yeah, this is a little Falcon history along with it, they get the Cardinals, who I'll take the Cardinals over the Vikings or the Rams any day. And then they get the Packers, who for the Falcons, they have a history of being able to beat the Packers. So that would be one of those 2, Falcons or Panthers, would be the schedule that I would take over the Saints for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting, but no matter what, it's kind of difficult for any of these teams. So it's just going to kind of have to be you can't afford to let a team upset you. in that case.
The Buccaneers.
Yeah, you got to win those games that are your kind of easier gimme type of games.
Buccaneers,
Make sure you
Browns,
win them all.
Bengals, like any of those teams.
Don't let anybody kind of sneak past you, because that's going to cause a problem for you. Just essentially for a team like the Saints is you're good enough as is.
Mm-hmm.
You just got to kind of keep it together. Don't let something embarrassing like that end to your season last year. Don't let that stick in your head. Get past it and just move forward.
There's 4 games that you mentioned that, and then I look at the schedule thing, and that the Browns and the Bengals I'm still going to keep as Saint wins, but there's 4 opponents that I could see as like, don't go in and underestimate them. The Buccaneers week 14, because the Bucs beat you last year.
Yeah.
In week 14, they're going to have Jameis coming back. And then Giants, Redskins, or Ravens. Like any of those 3 teams, yes, I would pick the Saints right now in those games, but I would not be surprised if week 4, 5, or 6, or 4, 5, or 7, because they have the bye in week 6, if you told me at the end of that week, yeah, the Redskins beat the Saints, I'd be like, all right, yet again, didn't pick that game, but I'm not totally shocked that the Redskins beat the Saints. Oh, I'm not totally shocked that the Ravens won. I'm not totally shocked that the Giants beat the Saints.
Yeah, it's certainly possible. I mean, it's any given Sunday. Mm-hmm. It's pretty simple in that case, but that's why I'm saying, especially in a tough division like the NFC South, you can't afford to lose these games that you should be able to win. You have to make sure that you aren't the reason why, you miss out on the playoffs, why you miss out on winning your division.
I will ask you kind of a loaded playoff question with this team.
Okay.
Number 1, if this team makes the playoffs in any place, wild card or division, how much of a Super Bowl favorite would you put them in? And 2, do you think this has to be a team that wins the division and finishes in the top 4? Or could this be a team we see be a wild card team and wreck through the playoffs to get to the Super Bowl?
I don't think they have to win the division. I think it certainly helps. It's useful, and I can answer your question with, as it stands right now, the Saints are my Super Bowl favorite.
Okay.
Still, even after last year, they had a fluke play is why they lost.
Well, they had a rookie mistake.
Yeah, and I think they could have beaten the Eagles.
That would have been... It would have been an interesting one. A lot of
it would have been
woulda,
fun.
coulda, shouldas in that one of who would have won that game. Any final thoughts on the Saints before we wrap this thing up?
My final thoughts is go ahead and play woulda, coulda, shoulda in the comment section. Let's watch and see who thinks that Nick Foles is a better quarterback than Drew Brees.
Exactly. Well, Carson Wentz will be back. Don't put some respect
I'm talking about
on
last
his name.
year.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying for this year.
That's Super Bowl MVP.
I expect
Nick
Carson
Foles.
Wentz to be playing Week 11 against the Saints.
Well, I expected him to be in the playoffs last year. But,
I expected him too, but let's hope he doesn't get injured like he did last year. But this is where you guys come in. Let us know what you think down below in that comment section. Also, a little bit of housekeeping here at the end. If you want to help support the podcast, make sure to check out Most Valuable Podcast on Patreon. That link is down below in the description. If you like the cool shirt I'm wearing, you can get your own in the description as well. We got our store link down below. You can also get that store at mostvaluablepodcast.com. You could also catch MVP each and every day on our website, mostvaluablepodcast.com. Then last but not least, if you have Apple Podcasts, you have iTunes, make sure to give the Onside Kick a 5-star rating. It would really mean the world to us. And type a little something about why you like listening to the podcast each and every week. Mark, we are almost done with the previews. We got one more division, one more side of it. Two divisions to go. Yeah. One side with the West to go. So we are now officially 75% through our previews. Don't forget, next week we will also be doing a top 10 for a way too early NFL mock draft. That coming to you because ya boy 22, not Mark's boy, ya boy 22 went ahead and asked for it. So we said, why not? We'll go ahead and do that. Also, make sure to check out our NFL predictions. I'll put the playlist. It'll pop above Mark's head right now as I'm talking. But thank you guys for watching on YouTube. Thank you guys for listening on podcast services around the world. And as always, have a good day, everybody.